We're here to weigh in on this from the angle of national unity in mourning the death of one of the nation's foremost generals is Public Affairs Analyst FEMI LAWSON. FEMI, welcome to the show. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
All right, let me take this first question, FEMI. Within the space of 3 months, the Nigerian Air Force have lost 3 fighter jets, leading to the death of about 20 officers, including the Chief of Air Staff. May his soul rest in peace. On previous occasions, investigations into the cause of the mishap has been promised. However, we haven't heard anything from the reports. We haven't gotten any outcome at this point. The most telling is the NAF 475 fighter jet that Boko Haram claimed responsibility of bringing down in March. This brings up many questions, Femi. First, why do you think the military has not been able to come up with any report on the previous air crashes? And what do you make of the statement from the defense headquarters that the 350 Beechcraft aircraft that crashed in Kaduna was due to bad weather?
Well, let me pick it from that statement claiming the crash occurred as a result of bad weather. I think that was hasty, and I think we must understand that when air mishaps like this happen, there are procedures and there are, of course, the international standards that has to be followed in even making pronouncement about the cause of such accidents. So I think it is too hasty to have declared or to have said by anybody that that crash was as a result of bad weather. But I think it's a very terrible moment for us as a nation. Within the span of 3 months, losing over 20 of our gallant men, to this similar occurrence tells us that something is actually wrong with that sector, particularly our Air Force that is in control of military aircraft and planes that are used by the military. And I think it's a moment that we should not wait to mourn another set of people in the nearest future if care is not taken. I think it should be a time for the country now to start taking stock of that very crucial, sector of our national security, that is the Air Force, that is in control of these aircraft that, of course, in 3 months have, witnessed this kind of tragic incidents.
Understood. I mean, the first part of Oji's question there talks about the investigations that many have been called and many of them haven't led to tangible outcomes. How confident are you in the process of this investigation, whether or not it'll give Nigerians, the Air Force, all of us at large, a clearer understanding into what has happened?
The country deserves to know, Nigerians deserve to know, and I think especially the first of its in the series of these recent aircraft, by now the process of investigation should be coming to a conclusion, all things being equal. And I think Nigerians deserve to know the causes of these air mishaps that we're witnessing. You recall that for almost 10 years or over 10 years now, we've not had even incidents involving commercial aircraft like we used to experience in this country before. It means something is being done correctly in that sector. So revealing the causes of these air mishaps that have not been witnessed, in the military, is very important. And I think Nigerians deserve to know this. And I think it's going to be the first major step that has to be taken in addressing these reoccurring, air mishaps. So Nigerians deserve to know this. And I think time is of essence because, like I said, we cannot continue to wait longer than we have waited and continue to experience, because if previous incidents are not properly investigated, the previous incidents, of course, people who are in the sector and managers of these air fleets are not also made to understand the causes of previous incidents, we may not be able to prevent such from happening in the future. So this is very important, and I think Nigerians as taxpayers who are responsible for funding the military, just like every other institutions in the country, deserve to know the outcome of these investigations. Remember, people's families are involved, people's friends and colleagues are involved, and it's going to be a lot in addressing some of the emotional trauma that people have been made to go through as a result of these accidents.
Right. Femi, you know that there are reports that these jets that have fallen from the sky, seemingly, were purchased recently. And if that should be the case, who should be held responsible for the purchase of what appears to be dysfunctional aircrafts? And what should the military do to avoid such occurrences? What's your opinion?
The aircraft operation, maintenance are very sophisticated, in nature. Unlike other means of public of transportation, rather, the air, traveling, air transport is a very sensitive, system of transportation, and it requires so much details, so much sensitivity, so much care than every other sector, every other means of transportation. So in this regard, something must be fundamentally wrong with the management system of the institution, the Nigerian Air Force, that is responsible for the control, maintenance, and operation of our military aircrafts. And I think this is why the outcome of previous investigations have to be made public, because this is not really normal. Good. And we cannot continue to make it look normal. Finding our planes dropping from the sky.
It is time for us to take a short break. Not to worry, when we return, we will continue this discussion with FEMI LAWSON. Please do stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on HRISE News. We're still joined by FEMI LAWSON, who's here to talk first and foremost about the loss of the Chief of Army Staff right here in Nigeria that happened on Friday, the burial of which, as we know, happened yesterday. One thing that perhaps some of us may have noticed was the fact that there was a lack of government personnel in terms of the top tiers of government at the funeral. Was that something, or the funeral proceedings, the burial, was that something that's noteworthy, most especially if we're talking about unity in the face of so much insecurity, to have the nation in mourning right after a tragedy? Would you not have expected to see more of the higher echelons of Nigerian government in attendance?
Of course I have, and just like you've seen a lot of Nigerians expressing, particularly on the social media, you come to understand how important we take some of the services that these gallant men are making, to the nation. For a nation to have lost its Chief of Army Staff, the Chief of Army Staff, by all standard, is not, a little person as far as the national institution of our security is concerned. And not just the Chief of Army Staff, 4 other generals and other gallant men, about 11 people on that aircraft, were lost. And we would have expected that the government should have been more represented than we saw yesterday. It was more or less like a totally military affair yesterday, apart from the presence of the Minister of Defense, who himself is a retired military general. There were no visible presence of people who ordinarily were expected, to attend such an important, event, which would have been a moment of honoring these people who died in the cause, of securing our nation. And I think it is not too good, and it has a way of demoralizing not just even the soldiers, but even relatives and friends, like some of us who have people in that institution, about how important this country really takes, as their sacrifices and their commitment to our national security, as an institution. I think it is not fair enough for the government, not to have been represented by. No, we are talking about the Chief of Army Staff of this country, for God's sake.
Correct. You're absolutely right, Femi. The calls for secession have taken center stage in Nigeria's polity. Do you think this mishap can serve as a pivotal point for the nation to be united?
We see the military as an institution is very strategic when you talk about national cohesion, national unity, and that is why even if you look at people on board the aircraft, you could find people from various ethnic nationalities. And if you look at the institutions of the military, even people who are direct staffs of the Chief of Army Staff, you have people from other parts of the country where he is not from, working actively with him, not only at the war front, even within the precinct, of the office of the Chief of Army Staff. And just like every other service chiefs, the military is an institution that has done a lot and that is doing a lot as far as unifying this country is concerned. And I think moments like this should be another opportunity for us to look at how we can, imbibe that spirit that the institution has been preaching to entrench, unity among our people. We are living in a country that is so divided today along the lines of our religion and our tribal sentiment, and leadership has not been helping. But we must begin to look at other institutions like the military, and institutions of like mind that are doing or that are positioning the country for the purpose of uniting us, for the purpose of, bringing people from diverse background together to work for the common good of the country. And I think the military represents that institution. And I think this moment should be a moment for us as Nigerians to also see the need for us to, live in the spirit of what the military as an institution represents and other institutions that are promoting, national unity.
Understood. Well, if we were to switch gears a little bit to another story that took headlines this week, there is, of course, the issue with the National Labour Congress and Kaduna State, and by extension with Governor Nasir El-Rufai himself. This week he did declare the NLC chairman, Ayuba Waba, and other union leaders wanted for economic sabotage and other attacks on public infrastructure. And this, at the heart of this dispute is obviously a whole group of people who do not want to lose their jobs, and a governor who says, listen, we're spending between 84 to 96% of our revenues on paying these staffs. It's not sustainable. We can't do it. Where do you think the happy medium is between both of these sides?
It's very unfortunate, and sometimes, personally, I don't blame people like Governor El-Rufai for such, funny, characters that they demonstrate at times like this. You must blame the labor leadership that has reduced the labor center, the labor union, to an appendage of their various state government and even the federal government. At a time where labor used to be taken very seriously, no governor would have even stayed in town, when the workers are on the street. Talk less of a governor, in such manner, like a military junta, declaring people who were on legitimate actions. Protest is a civil right. But somebody think because he has a little power somewhere, being the governor, you can just sit down in the comfort of your office and declare them wanted like common criminals. It tells you that these people don't even give any respect to the labor institution any longer, because even the labor has lost its focus over the years, and it is not that viable, vibrant, union that used to sneeze and government shivers. And that is why you can find, the approach of the Kaduna State government so arrogant and insensitive, to the point. Well, it's good that they are beginning to come together on a table to discuss, because government exists because of the people. And government is not your private business. You can't run government like you are running your private farm or private company. This is an institution that is of common interest. Everyone has a stake. So you don't do, and when you are doing something as an administrator, as a governor, and the people are raising opposition to it, and they are opposing views, it's always good that you come on a round table and discuss the merits and demerit of your actions. It is not enough to sit down and act like a dictator under a democracy and say, no going back, people can't do this, to the point of declaring people wanted and even spreading false informations about, even your own workers, like we witnessed during the strike.
All right. So now that the Kaduna State government and the Labour Congress have reached an agreement on the plan to lay off workers, do you think this will lead to other state governors downsizing and also perhaps give the federal government the impetus to adopt the Oronsanye report?
Well, I don't think government will stop downsizing. It is a reality when you look at the economic situation in the country. I think rather than continually protesting the sack of workers, I think the NLC should have been more proactive, positively engaging government on how we can get this system to work. You see, a lot of our states don't actually have reasons to be poor, to the point of sacking, people who they can no longer pay. But today, our states are so poor because they have to wait for 30 days, go to Abuja and get, stipends, come back home and spend everything on salary. It's becoming unbearable for states to run because our states are no longer productive. The government as an institution is becoming so unproductive. And I think the labor, rather than reducing itself to an institution demanding for sack or no sack, should also be involved in the call that patriotic Nigerians have been making for us to restructure this country onto the path of prosperity. If these states are allowed to operate and function as true components of a federal system, a lot of them are viable enough to pay even more than 30,000, 40,000 workers. But because these states are redundant, they are not productive, they will continue to sack workers. It's an inevitable thing. And you see, and when they don't sack workers, we don't also expect that people work without being paid. Because that is the implication. When there's no money to pay workers, then we start saying months of salaries not being paid, or you have to go home. So labor should also be involved in the demand of Nigerians for the restructuring of this country to the path of prosperity in such a way that will guarantee not only that government is able to pay salary, but government is also able to meet other fundamental needs that are the purpose and duties of a state. Thank
you, Femi. We have unfortunately come to the end of this segment. Thank you for joining us.